Welcome to My Spoonie Sisters, featuring stories from special guests dedicated to empowering those with chronic illness. Our goal? To connect people and provide the support and tools they need to live a better life. For those with chronic illness, our energy levels just fade faster. We must be more purposeful with the spoons allotted to us. So grab your coffee or tea, sister, and tune in as My Spoonie Sisters share stories of living with chronic illness. Hi, my Spoonie Sisters. Today we have the pleasure of having a guest, Terry Tucker. Now, Terry believes in the power of a good story to motivate, inspire, and encourage others to lead their uncommon and extraordinary lives. He is the founder of Motivational Check LLC. He has been an NCAA Division I college basketball player, a SWAT hostage negotiator, and a cancer warrior. He's also the author of the book Sustainable Excellence, The 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. Terry's mission is to constantly enrich and improve lives through inspiring, diverse and uplifting, I'm sorry, people, I can't talk today, and uplifting content without sacrificing relationships with family and friends. Wow, that's a mouthful, but hi, Terry, how are you today?
I am great, Jenny. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Oh, I am so excited. So let's dive in and start a little bit about you. Want to give us a little rundown besides what I had to say?
Yeah. So born and raised on the south side of Chicago. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall. And actually, I actually went to college on a basketball scholarship. When I graduated from college, I moved home to find a job. I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. The good news was I found that first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. The bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. As I mentioned, professionally started out at Wendy's, and then I moved to hospital administration. I actually went to work for the hospital that took care of my father and my grandmother. And then I made a major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And as you mentioned, I was a SWAT hostage negotiator as part of that. After that, I became a school security consultant, coached girls high school basketball. But for the last 12 years now, I've been battling this rare form of cancer. And then I guess just finally, my wife and I have been married for 30 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Wow. You've lived such a big life. I mean, I don't even know where to get started. I definitely am curious about being a hostage negotiator. How in the world do you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I guess for your audience who doesn't understand how SWAT is sort of configured on most police departments or sheriff's departments, there are usually two groups. There's the tactical team, which are the men and women who have all the toys, as we used to call them, the guns and the tear gas and the armored cars. And then there were the negotiators. And we used to joke with the tactical team that if we did our job right, they didn't get to use any of their toys and things like that. Being a negotiator, most SWAT teams usually have the best officers with the best training and the best equipment. And I've always wanted to be part of the best in my life. So when there was an opening on the negotiating team, I put in for it. I had to do a physical fitness exam. I had to meet with the psychologist. I had to take psychological exams. I had to meet with the team. And it was an all or nothing with the team. If one person said, I don't really like Terry, I've worked with him before, he's hard to work with, whatever, you didn't get on the team. So fortunately, everybody gave me the thumbs up, and that started a 4.5-year career as a negotiator.
Wow, that's exciting. And honestly, I mean, you're such a personable person. I could see how you could do any of these jobs. You could walk into anything and I could see you excel. Definitely.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your chronic illness journey. Can you share a little bit about the form of melanoma that you have and how maybe that was discovered?
Sure. 2012, I was a girls' high school basketball coach in Texas. and I had a callus break open on the bottom of my left foot, right below my third toe. And initially didn't think much of it because as a coach, you're on your feet a lot. But after a few weeks of it not healing, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine. And he took an x-ray and he said, Terry, I think you have a cyst in there and I can cut it out. And he did. And he showed it to me. It was just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it, no dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I received a call from him. And as I mentioned, he was a friend of mine. And the more difficulty he was having explaining to me what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming. Until finally, he just laid it out for me. He said, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years, and I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have an incredibly rare form of melanoma, which I think for most people think melanoma, too much exposure to the sun affects the melanin, the pigment in their skin. I have a rare form that has nothing to do with sun exposure that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. And because it was so rare, he recommended I go to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston to be treated. I did. They removed the tumor and all the lymph nodes in my groin. And then they told me, you're going to be dead in 2 years. We have nothing to help you. There's nothing we can do for you other than surgery. So I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. Maybe I can turn that death sentence into a life sentence. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 12 years now.
Well, 12 years is a lot longer than 2. So I think that person was definitely incorrect. I don't even know where they come up with these numbers sometimes, because obviously I'm looking at you. You look like a great healthy guy. And obviously on the bottom of your foot, no sun exposure there. So do they know much about this and how in the world you could get something like this on the bottom of your foot?
They don't. And, and that sort of begs the question. You get this rare form of cancer. Well, how did I get this? Especially, is there something genetic that you would pass on to your children if you have children? And I had probably about 4 years ago, I had all 88 genes that doctors either know of or suspect cause all forms of cancer, not just melanoma, but, breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, everything. And I have absolutely no mutations in any of my genes, which then begs the question, why did I get this? And nobody has been able to answer that question. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about or contemplating why I got it. I got it. And I'm going to have to deal with it. I'm going to have to do the best I can with it. I mean, there have been many setbacks along the way. I mean, initially they put me on a drug called interferon to, as my doctor used to say, we're going to kick the can down the road. It's not a treatment for your cancer. And so I took a weekly injection of interferon, which gave me terrible flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after those injections. And I took those injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And it wasn't a cure. It was just like, well, we're trying to buy you some more time. Eventually ended up in the intensive care unit because of the toxicity to the interferon with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which is usually not compatible with being alive. Somehow I survived that, but I had to stop it. And the cancer came back almost immediately in the exact same spot on my foot where it had presented. That was 2017, 2018, had my left foot amputated, worked its way up my leg, 2019, 2 more surgeries. And then in 2020, an undiagnosed tumor kind of in my ankle area grew large enough that it broke my leg. It fractured my tibia. And my only recourse during the pandemic was to have my leg amputated above the knee. And I got tumors in my lungs, which I'm still being treated for. And I know this sounds really dark and ugly, and it certainly has been. But I'll tell you 2 things I've learned real quick. Number one, I don't think you know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. And secondly, and this is going to sound kind of weird, I'm sure, cancer's made me a better human being.
Calling all spoonies. As a host of a chronic illness podcast, nothing lights up my day more than hearing from you, our incredible listeners. Whether it's a topic close to your heart that you want us to uncover, or you are keen to show your own journey as a guest on our show, your voice matters. Living with chronic illness can often feel isolating, but through the power of podcasting, we can come together as a community to uplift, educate, and inspire one another. Your stories, insights, and questions drive the conversations we have and the topics we explore. So if there's something on your mind, a story that you are just itching to share, or a guest you'd love to hear from, don't hesitate to reach out. Your voice is not only welcomed here, but celebrated. Let's continue to amplify the voices of those living with chronic illnesses and create a space where everyone feels heard, supported, and empowered. Together, we are stronger. I get exactly what you're saying. I really do. I think anyone living with any kind of chronic illness, whether it be cancer or an autoimmune condition, I think for the most part, most people I've spoken to, we all feel that way. And I see the beauty in that. Who doesn't want to be a better person and be more compassionate to other people? It's a wonderful thing.
It really is. I mean, and I've had people ask me, you were a college athlete, you were on the SWAT team, you were a very physical person. You did a lot of physical things in your life, and now I have no leg and I'm in a wheelchair. And how do you balance those? How do you deal with that in your mind? And my response has always been, when you can't do what you were good at, you do what's important. And I think right now, as you mentioned, when you have a chronic or a terminal illness, you figure out real quickly what's important in life and you spend your energy on that.
Absolutely. And on top of that, you can also find other things that you're good at.
Right.
And you wrote a book. And so I'm going to actually skip some of my other questions and ask you to tell us about this book.
Yeah, the book is called Sustainable Excellence, the 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And it was really a book born out of two conversations I had. I never wanted to write a book. It was never really anything people were suggesting that I do. And, there's that old joke that says, when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So God never told me to write a book or anything like that. But what people did they were making suggestions. You should write a book. You should write a book. You should write a book. And I was like, no, I don't want to write a book. But the book was really born out of two conversations, as I said. One was with a former player that I had coached in high school who had moved to the area in Colorado where my wife and I live with her fiance. And the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I was excited that she was living close now and I could watch her find and live her purpose. And Jenny, she got real quiet for a while. And then she kind of looked at me and she was like, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, and there is a reason, and using your unique gifts and talents and living that reason. So that was one conversation. And then I had a young man reach out to me on social media from college. And he asked me a question. He said, what do you think are the most important things I should learn to not just be successful in my job or in business, but to be successful in life? And I didn't want to give him the get up early, work hard, help up, the sort of cliches that we all know. I wanted to see if I could go deeper with him. So I spent some time and eventually kind of had these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And so I sent them to him. And then I stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath that principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates this principle. So literally during the months I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. And that's how Sustainable Excellence came to be.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so one thing that we were discussing is the 4 truths to help others lead their uncommon and extraordinary life. So what are these 4 things? Can you run us through those a little bit?
I can. The 4 truths are, I actually have them here on a Post-it note in my office. So I see them multiple times during the day and they constantly get reinforced in my mind. And they're just one sentence each. So number 1 is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. Number 2 is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. The third one I look at sort of as a legacy type of truth, and it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the last one I think is pretty self explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And I look at these four truths and I kind of call them the bedrock of my soul. I just think they're a good place to start to try to build a quality life around.
How can you not be encouraged by that? I'm listening to you, and how can you not be encouraged? So I'm trying to think of where I want to go with this. So
like a rabbit hole, right?
I know. I have a million questions, but so how did you implement these into your personal life for yourself and what you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of this is really goes back. People ask me, is there one that's more important than the other? And initially, I used to say no, they're all equally important. But the more I've read, the more I've thought about it, the more I've studied, I think the first one about controlling your mind, or your mind is going to control you. I remember I read an article, the Cleveland Clinic said that we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts that pass through our mind every day, most of which we don't even pay attention to. 80% of those thoughts are negative, and 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had the day before. So on any given day, we have roughly 3,500 new thoughts. And our mind operates at a speed of about 1,000 words a minute and generates enough energy to light a 25-watt light bulb. So the mind is just an amazing organ. And the thing that I guess that I've come to understand about the brain is that, and I'll give you a basketball analogy. If I took a basketball and I went out onto the court and I practiced shooting free throws, there would be a certain area of my brain, if we could look at it under an MRI, that would light up. If I thought about taking that basketball and going out onto the court and shooting those shots, that same area of my brain would light up. So whether you actually do it or whether you think about it, your brain doesn't know the difference. It's just like, okay, Terry's shooting free throws. Is he? Or is he thinking about shooting free throws? So what we say, how we talk to each other, the martial artist Bruce Lee used to tell people, be incredibly careful how you talk to yourself, because your body doesn't know, your brain doesn't know whether you're actually doing it or whether you're thinking about it or whether you're talking to yourself about it. So don't go into these things. And I know this is easy for me to say because I know your audience is also people with chronic illnesses. I mean, there's no perfect day. There's no day that, I'm tired, I'm beat up, I'm down. Yeah, I know. We all are. But my God, and I know I've talked a lot, but let me tell you one more story. This is a true story, happened back in the 1950s. There was a professor at Johns Hopkins University who did an experiment with rats. Have you heard this before?
It sounds familiar.
Okay. So he did it. It was a very simple experiment. He put rats in a tank of water that was over their head, and he wanted to see how long they would tread water. And initially, rats treaded water for about 15 minutes. And just as those rats were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took the exact same rats and put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about that. The first time, 15 minutes. It's not like you're going to flunk a test or your business is going to go under. You're going to die. Your life is going to be over. And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives, that if we know we're doing the right thing, maybe not today, maybe not this week, maybe not even this year, but at some point in time, we'll get to where we want to be, more than likely. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. We quit, we give up, we give in long before our physical bodies do. And that's because we haven't calloused or toughened our mind to deal with that body.
I think that's such an excellent point. I mean, and it goes to show that, like, okay, so someone that, has worked as hard as they have, like you, to be playing with amazing players playing basketball and someone that, tries once a week. There's going to be a difference there. A
Yeah,
huge
there absolutely is. I mean, there's an absolute correlation between the effort you put in and the results that you get out. And I guess I don't want your audience to think that, I'm kind of Superman. You're not. You're looking at me right now. There's no S on my chest. I do not wear a cape and fly around with magical powers. Everybody has a breaking point. But I honestly believe that breaking point is so much further down the road. We give up so easily. And so then people ask, well, how do you callous your mind? How do you make your mind stronger? It's not hard, but since our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure, the brain is kind of working against us. And what I recommend, and I do this every day, so I'm not asking people to do something I wouldn't do. Every day of your life, do one thing that makes you nervous, that scares you, that makes you uncomfortable, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, and they hit all of us, we lose somebody who's close to us, we get let go from our job, we find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness, you'll be so much more resilient to deal with that pain than if you hadn't calloused your mind in the first place.
I agree with you so much on that. So what are some of the things that you would recommend to others that you've done for yourself to make your mind stronger?
I mean, I do things that a lot of people don't like. And I think the first thing in the morning, make your bed. And make your bed. That's not, no, it's not a big deal. And like I said, these things, you don't have to go out and crawl through, 15 feet of snow or something like that. Make your bed. Oh, I don't want to make my bed. But by making your bed, you do one thing you don't want to do. And the second thing is you get a win first thing in the morning. First thing, I made my bed. I've got something positive going in my life. There are times when I don't want to put on my prosthetic leg and try to learn to walk. There are times when I don't want to try to exercise. All right, I'm going to take a shower, and I always do cold therapy after a shower. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But I do it because it's one of those things that's uncomfortable. So the other day I called the dentist. I hate going to the dentist. I guess I hate a lot of things, don't I? I hate going to the dentist, but I called the dentist and made my 6-month appointment. It's like, oh, that's no big deal. When you hate the dentist as much as I do, it's a big deal. So like I say, those things you don't want to do. Oh, I'm laying on the couch. I'm binge watching Netflix. I should go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. Get up and go to the gym. You need to study for a test. I don't want to study for that test. I'm having fun with my friends. Study for the test. Just find things in life that you don't want to do and do them. It's pretty simple.
Yes, because quite honestly, for those that are parents, we tell our kids the same kind of thing. So why would we not want to tell ourselves that?
Right.
I feel like a hypocrite if I tell something to one of my children and I'm not doing the same thing. And so I strive to do those things that make me uncomfortable that I don't like to do either because I'm going to be better for it. So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
You are. And that's, you're modeling what you want your kids to do. And that goes back to character. What kind of character do you want your children to have? And character is caught. It's not taught. You're not going to read a book and say, oh, okay, I got great character now. You're going to watch how people do things, watch how people handle things and say, boy, I really like the way she handled that, whatever it is. Or I didn't like the way he handled that. That was character. I remember I had a job interview one time and I spent an hour and a half with the senior vice president of marketing. And we talked about everything in my life up till the time I graduated from college. And then the interview was over. And I asked him, I said, I got to ask you, you didn't ask me one question about marketing or business or my philosophy. We just talked about these first 20 years of my life. And he said, well, I got plenty of people around me that'll tell me whether you're good at marketing or you would fit in with the team and things like that. He said, but I want to hire people of good character. And I believe character is developed in the first 20 years of our life. So that's why I asked you, what was it like growing up with your parents and your brothers in high school and college and having knee surgery and basketball? Because that's what that was going to tell me whether you were a person of good character or not.
That's a really good point. I don't think that's something I would have considered. Okay.
It certainly wasn't anything I considered. It's certainly never an interview I've had like before or after. So it was pretty unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I want to go out and tell everybody that that's what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does your support system look like?
I have a wife and daughter. I have two brothers that are alive. My mother will be 89 years old this year. My support system is what I call my three F's: faith, family, and friends. I have a tremendously deep faith in God. I'll never forget when I had my leg amputated and I had found out I had tumors in my lungs. About 6 months later, my oncologist showed me my CAT scan. And I have no medical background. I don't know how to read a CAT scan, but you can kind of look at it and be like, boy, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there, and stuff. So I had these big tumors in my lungs. I had fluid all around the pleural spaces. And I remember looking at my oncologist and saying, how was I alive? And Jenny, I'll never forget this. He put his head down. He shook his head no. And then he looked up to me and he said, I don't know because you shouldn't have been, which told me that God wasn't finished with me yet. When I die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about the dying. Spend more time worrying about the living. And then my family, my wife and daughter and I. After, again, I had the leg amputation, I had these tumors in my lungs, my doctor wanted to put me on chemotherapy. And I looked at him and I said, it's going to save my life? He's like, probably not, but it might buy you some more time. And I said, well, if the outcome is going to be the same, I'm not sure I want to go through all that ugliness, but I'll go home and talk to my family. And it's a funny story, but it really happened this way. So I go home and start telling my wife and daughter about what's going on. And my daughter's all right, we need a family meeting. I'm like, family meeting? There's three of us. It's not like we got a board here or something like that. It's like, so we sit around the kitchen table and individually talk about how we feel about me having chemotherapy. And then when we're done with that, my daughter again, it's like, all right, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy? And my wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, wait a minute. Am I getting outvoted for something that I don't want to do? And I remembered when I was in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we loved the most to class. And as we were learning techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned you will fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. So I ended up taking chemotherapy, not because I wanted to, but because my wife and daughter wanted me to, and I love them more than I love myself. And in hindsight, it was the right thing to do. It was the bridge that got me to the drug that I'm on now. And then finally, friends. And the interesting thing, and maybe you can opine on this as well, there were people when I got cancer that I was like, I'm 100% sure these people will stay with me. They'll be in the foxhole with me, so to speak. And they were like, Terry, I can't deal with this. I can't. I sort of got to back off. And then there were people that I never expected to be there for me that have never left my side in 12 years. So faith, family, and friends are really my support system through this journey.
And it's true. It's true. Exactly everything that you just said. And to go with the friends part too, it's the people that you least expect. And they come out of the woodwork and they will fight for you. They will bring you meals. They'll offer to clean your house. They'll pick you up things, surprise you with things. It's a beautiful and amazing thing. But you cannot always count on those people that you think that you have a really good relationship with, because whatever they've been through in their lives, it might scare the heck out of them and they're going to go running. And I had the same experience. And I was like, I have RA. It's not going to kill me. I mean, the complications from it someday could. But to me, I had a friend tell me that she couldn't handle being friends with me and watch me die. And I was like, what? What is wrong with you? Like, that's not even going to happen. Like,
Right.
Yeah. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the people when I had my first surgery, when they took the tumor out of the bottom of my foot, I did not have to spend the night in the hospital. I was sent home when I woke up. And I remember I had a 95-year-old friend, and I'd been home about 20 minutes. My cell phone rings, and his name was Bud. And he's like, Terry, it's Bud. Can I come over for a few minutes? I know you just had surgery, but I promise I just want to drop some stuff off. And within 20 minutes or so, Bud was standing in our living room with a fully cooked chicken and a pan of cream cheese Danish that he had bought at Costco. And he was like, here, you got dinner for tonight and you got breakfast for the morning. I wrote about this in my book, that there's so many people, and I've done this, and I'm not proud that I have. So many people that, they give you the line, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And I think that's such a cop-out. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go have surgery, or even if it's something positive, I'm going to have a baby or something like that. I don't have time to sit around and figure out how you can help me. The same things that you need to do at your house, kids need to get picked up from school, the garbage needs to go out, the grass needs to be cut, are the same things I have to do at my house. So don't ask me what to do. Just do something. Even if you go to the store and buy me food and I don't like it, I'm not going to be like, I hate this. Thank you. I'll be like, thank you. Thank you for what you did. Get involved in people's lives. Don't sit on the sideline and try to convince yourself that you're actually playing in the game.
Exactly. And if you feel like you know enough of the people that can also chime in and help, start a food train.
Yeah.
Make sure there's meals constantly coming in, because those are things that save people time, especially after a surgery. Your wife's probably tending to your needs and caring for you and picking up the medications and doing whatever she can to help you feel comfortable. So let's make life easier, and boom, a meal is there.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. And as a good friend, I hope that everyone that listens to this podcast already knows that stuff. But if it's new to you, be a good friend. Just show up and do the thing. Just show up. Okay, so how did it go?
It went. I got the whole, you're going to lose your hair. I never lost my hair. So you're going to ask me why I have this bad haircut, aren't you? So that was a bad joke.
It's not bad.
But the chemo really was the bridge. I'm on a clinical trial drug now that is not available to the public. And it's interesting, the way this drug works is it does nothing to the cancer. But what it does is, the way cancer proliferates in the body is it secretes an enzyme, a protein that hides itself from your immune system. And what this drug does is goes in and wipes out that protein, that enzyme, so that my own immune system, just like if you had a cold or a flu virus, could say, hey, that doesn't belong here. We need to go attack it, your own immune system. And so for the past little over 3 years, I guess we're closing on 3.5 years, I still have the tumors in my lungs, but they are, as my doctor says, stable. And so every week I go to the hospital, or every 3 weeks, I go to the hospital for a week, and I'm administered this drug. And it gives me pretty bad side effects. I'm very nauseous. I have very violent throwing up incidences. I have a shake and all this kind of stuff. And I've been doing this for 3 years. And my nurses are like, why do you keep doing this? And I'm like, well, one, it's working. And two, something I learned from team sports. I started playing basketball when I was 9, played all the way up till I was 21 when I graduated from college. And what team sports taught me, and for me it was sports, I think it can be whatever team we're on, and we're all on teams, is the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. You realize on a team that if you don't do your job, not only do you let yourself down, but you let your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down, your parents down, etc. And if you think about it, the biggest team game that we all play is this game of life. So while this clinical trial drug may not save my life, maybe it's going to save the life of somebody 5 years from now, 10 years from now, based on the data that the doctors are gleaning from my blood tests and my scans. And to me, that's being part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Definitely. And, I look at it this way. The things that you're doing are hopefully keeping you around longer for your family, and potentially helping someone in your family later in life, or someone else that you're close to later in life. And so why not try to help out however you can? And at the end of the day, I'm sure your wife and your daughter, they want the best for you, and they want you around in their lives as long as they possibly can have you.
Yes, they do. One of the side effects of this is also I am hypersensitive to vaccines. So the COVID boosters have put me in the hospital for 3 and 4 days. And I remember the last time I got a booster, I was in the emergency room, and I remember the doctor came in. My vital signs were not great. And he said, I had to ask you, if something happens, do you want us to try to revive you? And I was so mentally and physically depleted. I literally looked at my wife and said, you decide. I could care less one way or the other. If I die, I die. I'm good with that. If you want to keep me around, and she was like, no, we want to keep you around, but I mean, and I'm sure your audience, depending on what they're dealing with, have had those times where you just don't care. You're just so beat up mentally and physically. And, and I preach, control your mind. At that point in time, I didn't feel like I was in real control. I was just, I don't care. I'm so sick of being sick that if I die, I'm good with that. If I keep going, well, that's going to be up to somebody who's bigger than me.
Absolutely. And, you trust your family to help make that decision for you when you're not well enough to make that decision on your own.
Right.
So what would be probably your biggest piece of advice that you would give to listeners? I mean, I know I've asked you many advice questions, but what would be the big lasting one?
I guess I'll tell you a story that will answer that question. I had a nurse recently ask me that was taking care of me, and she said, what was it like to lose your foot in 2018 and then to lose your leg in 2020? And I said, it certainly has not been easy. Trying to learn how to walk again, when you're in your 60s and you're 6'8", falling is not an option. You fall from this height, you get hurt. But what I told her was, cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind. It can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And that's who I am. That's who you are, Jenny. That's who everybody who's listening to us is. And we spend a tremendous amount of time working on this body. We go to the gym, we get enough rest, we reduce stress, we eat right. And I'm certainly not telling you not to do that. You absolutely should do that. But what I am suggesting is maybe this. Instead of working so hard on your body, every day spend a little time working on your heart, your mind, and your soul. We know this body's going to die. We know it's going to decay. We know it's going to go away. But your heart, your mind, and your soul, I believe those things are eternal. I believe they're going to live on. And I just don't think we spend enough time working on it.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with you. Your mind is a powerful thing, and it stays behind with your family and all those that know you and love you, and work hard on it. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that we have not covered that we need to make sure we bring up?
No, I think that's perfect.
All right. Well, it has been such a pleasure, and I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Well, Jenny, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah. All right, listeners, until next time, don't forget your spoon. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. The information should not be taken as a replacement for medical, clinical, professional advice, diagnoses, or medical intervention. My Spoonie sisters and guests will not be held liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Trigger warning. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics including, but not limited to, suicide, abuse, mental illness, and chronic disease. You are advised to refrain from listening if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. None of the guests or hosts will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Life is not merely to be alive, but to be well. Living a life with a chronic illness is best described with one word: unpredictable. Be Well's products are designed to make the unpredictable easier to deal with. Back when I was getting my infusions, I would have loved to have their adult zip hoodie. They even have one in pink. They also have everything from one-day pill holders to urgency buckets. So remember, they want to make your life a little easier. So be sure to check out Be Well.